So we've talked about hiring, we've talked about culture, we've talked about bringing in the right people, but what about when they're there? Like, how do you make them stay? How do we reduce retention? How do we, people leaving, attrition rather? How do we inspire people to do their best work possible? You know, we've talked about the values, we've talked about hiring and culture, but how does it work from a leadership perspective? You know, what would be your advice to leaders current or future that are listening to this now?
Yeah, I think when it comes to retention, in a startup, you should think about it through the lens of regrettable churn or people leaving, because one of the things I had to learn quite quickly is that in a startup, you should hire slowly, but let people go
hire slow,
quickly,
fire fast.
which is, I think, some of the biggest mistakes I made was when I made the hiring decision too quickly, and then I could see that someone wasn't correct for a role, and we let them go too late. When actually it was perfectly obvious within 3 or 4 weeks it wasn't the right fit, and I should have been stronger in making some of those decisions. And that's a learning process I had to go on as a sort of 23, 24-year-old who was still finding their feet at the time. So I don't think you should optimize for retention. I think you should optimize to reduce regrettable churn, and that's those people who are great, who are delivering value for the business. How do you retain those people? And we haven't had any regrettable churn to date. I think over the past 2 years, we've hired 26 people. 3 of them we've let go, but the sort of core team, we've managed to keep, and we haven't had anyone leave because they've got another job or been offered more money. And I think the way we've been able to do that is because we do have that really strong culture. I think people genuinely believe in our mission. People want to solve this social problem either because they've experienced it themselves in their own life, or they've got something in their interest set or their experience that makes them particularly attuned to this issue. So if you hire people who are genuinely mission aligned, you're going to get far less churn, because they don't just see the job as a transaction based on their sort of check they get at the end of the month through payroll. They see it as part of their identity and their purpose. So that's why it's so important to hire people who are mission aligned. It's not just about getting results, it's actually being able to keep people. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing as well is the team. Having a fantastic recruitment process that identifies highly talented people. That's not just about getting the best people who can deliver the most value in their jobs. It actually creates a culture that people want to be part of, because talented people love being surrounded by talented people. It makes you feel great to be able to have incredible conversations with people every day in the office, to have someone sat next to you who can kind of work through that really tricky problem with you. Anyone who's a high performance person is going to really enjoy that. So that's why it's so important to keep a high standard in your recruitment process, because if you let that slip over time, you're not only going to get worse people, you're also going to reduce the kind of stickiness of your high performance people. They're going to be less likely to stay. So I think that's really important as well. We set the sort of bar super high of the people that we hire for that reason. And I think having a no dickhead policy is important as well. That's not an explicit part of our culture deck, but it's kind of implicit in what we do. I think if you have someone in the business who you really dislike, again, it dramatically increases your chance of leaving, especially if that person's your manager. There's the phrase, people don't leave a business, they leave a manager, right? So I think making sure you have that really good sync between your team is incredibly important, and being really attentive to that. As a founder and being an exec team, you should put 10-20% of your time into thinking about your culture and your team, and being really receptive to changes. We do weekly pulse surveys through Slack where we get a lot of quantitative data on different parts of our culture across the business, and we do quarterly culture surveys where we get that longer qualitative feedback. That's not just a HR box ticking exercise. That's about getting regular, consistent data on how people feel about the way they're working, their manager, diversity within the business, their pay, all those things. And when you detect things, you can solve problems before they blow up into big issues. So I think thinking about not just how you create a culture, but how you measure it and refine it as well is incredibly important. It's not just about creating that culture deck, which I spoke about. It's about embedding it and kind of iterating on it over time. Culture's not static, it's organic. I think that's how we've managed to build the culture that we have done today at Zero Gravity.